Hello, I'm Alexandra, and today I have the opportunity to interview someone who has one of the most dangerous occupations on the planet. Today I'm interviewing Eliot Bernstein. Eliot is an inventor, most notably a software designer and the creator of a technology called IviewIt. What is IviewIt? IviewIt is a video codec, but for those of you who don't know what a video codec is, whenever you go on some of your favorite websites, such as Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, even quite a few of those tube sites that are streaming adult content in high definition, whenever you go to those sites, you're experiencing the beauty of IviewIt. Now, after Eliot developed IviewIt, a lot of people saw the value behind that particular invention, and rather than giving him what he was owed, they stole the technology from him. Eliot has been fighting for years to try to find justice in regards to this issue. He's been seeking ways to get his story out there, and though I don't have the biggest audience, I do have an audience. And I hope that those of you out there watching today do take the time to listen to Eliot's story and get to know him and get to know all of the elements involved behind what has stifled the truth of his situation from being known. Welcome to the show today, Eliot. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Great, great. Now, I'm sure my audience is going to think that I'm exaggerating when I say that you have one of the most dangerous occupations in the world, but in actuality, you definitely do. And that's why your actual occupation is protected by Article 1 in the Constitution. Now, could you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I'm sure I'm not quite getting the point across to the audience.
Well, Monica, an inventor, by his very nature, is given the only right to a monopoly power in the United States. So if you invent something new and novel, you can patent it, and you can be the only guy to market it and put everybody else out of business and be the only manufacturer of your product worldwide. So you have a right to monopoly power, or you have the right to license your technologies to other industries. And the problem with that is, and over the course of the history of the Patent Office, of course, is that inventors are, if you come in with a new alternative fuel that replaces gasoline, chances are the big industry guys will either gobble your invention up and hide it so that they can, still sell gasoline, or they'll attempt to bury you and bury your inventions, or they'll steal them, like in the case of the windshield wiper inventor, where the big automakers took the invention from the inventor, used it for years, and then beat him off in court and everything for a bunch of years. Jerome Lemelson, another famous inventor, also went through years of fighting for his patent royalties, and in the end, if you win, big, if it's a big invention, and that can be billions and billions of dollars. And so since innovation drives our country, invention is protected under the Constitution, because to give someone that power, you're going to have a lot of forces trying to rip it from them, suppress them, do all kinds of things that have happened to inventors over the years, including murder. And that would be in the case of Tesla, where, again, major technology, free energy was buried by big companies. JP Morgan immediately moved when he found that Tesla, who he was funding, had free energy, moved to shut him down. Burned his lab to the ground, basically, and then they threw mud all over him for the rest of his life and buried him from the history books, because had his invention succeeded, he would have put them all out of business. So Tesla and all inventors are given the full weight of the Constitution behind them to fight these forces.
Now, what I find incredibly interesting about your situation, Eliot, is how you claim to have been divinely inspired or spiritually guided to manifest IviewIt. Could you explain the process of developing the software and how it came to you?
Sure, Monica. Just like in the last question regarding Tesla, I too, like Tesla, claim that my inventions were spiritually gifted to me through what you could associate with voices coming into your head and basically giving you the recipe for your inventions. And Tesla attributed all of his inventions to divine intervention. And so most inventors who have a novel idea have that novel idea out of the box. It comes to you in epiphany, a stroke of genius, whatever you want to term it. And both of my key inventions were inspired by that, as well as the fact that when I was 19, I was in a car accident in a coma. And during that time period, I had visions of the children on Earth actually suffering a terrible fate. And I came back possessed, basically, to help the children fix the planet and stop and offset the damages their parents in greed were doing to the planet. And I began work on a thing called a thought journal when I was in college, trying to use fax machines and computers to have people write into a journal their ideas on solving ozone problems or rainforest depletion. And way back then, there was no internet, and there were 20 megabyte hard drives and monochrome screens.
Yes.
So it was a crazy idea, and I did give up a significant piece of my life trying to do it. And then I kind of shelved the idea because technologically we were too far behind. And with the spawning of the internet, I saw that I could make a thought journal, but the problem of bringing the people together was limited in its scope to text. And what I really needed to bring the children together was visual techniques such as, rich imaging and video conference, which were thought at the time prior to my invention to be impossible. And the leading engineers of the world called it the search for the Holy Grail, somebody who could provide full screen, full frame rate video at low bandwidth. Because mathematically it doesn't work. So in dreams, I heard the voices that told me the formula of how to achieve rich imaging and video on the internet. And I filed patents on it, and that's how it all started.
All right. Now, Eliot, could you explain to the audience exactly how the IviewIt technology works?
Sure. Let me start with the first invention, which is an invention that solved for pixelation, it was called. So that when you went to zoom on a digital image, you pixelate it. You might get one or two zooms in, but then it broke up into pixels. Now, today we don't have that problem, because of my invention. And how that works is fairly simple today when you hear it, but prior it was unimaginable. And the concept kind of started out with the idea of the problem appeared to be that since the dawning of mankind, when we made a picture and built a frame, we built them roughly the same size so that the picture would fit into the frame. And so therefore, when you put a digital picture into a digital frame, when you went to zoom, you instantly started to pixel it. What I said is, let's put a canvas that's the size of the Empire State Building behind the viewing window. And so that you would be able, you know, if you took a massive picture, you would be able to zoom for, you know, pretty much infinite zoom without pixelating, because now you had so much more reference data behind the actual frame to zoom in on. Like walking up to a building, you would be able to walk straight up to it and finally see the, you know, cement it's made of. Whereas from way back, you only see the bricks. So now when you zoom on a picture, it's kind of like walking into it. We were working in 3D imaging environments, and once you plugged it in, it was, you know, beyond cool to the whole world, because nobody had ever seen pictures that you could zoom and pan around it with such depth. And so we patented that technology. That was the first technology.
Okay.
After solving that, you know, the idea of doing video and video conference on the internet was perhaps the greatest challenge to the digital world. And the reason being, you know, we were trying to take full frame rate video and compress it using encoders, and then transmit it through small cable or telephone wires. So to get that full frame rate video down to the lower bandwidths, we began what the mathematics would require, which is to lower the amount of data. And how do you do that? You start removing frames out of the video. So you only do 3 out of the 29 plus frames you need for true motion video. And you reduce the audio quality. And soon you have a postage size stamp with 3 to 5 frames of video. And you know, with the audio, it comes out as very quick, and it looks like a bad picture show. That was the state of the art prior to my invention. And so if you recall, Monica, I don't know if you were playing with video back then.
Oh, I've been on computers since I was 4 years old. That's why this is amazing to me, because I remember when this technology was first coming into the foray. I remember, you know, everything. Like, I remember when, well, you were talking about how Real, I think the company is called Real Media or Real Technologies. In one of your earlier interviews, you were talking about how they utilized the IviewIt technology at that point. And I remember when the Real video codecs were first coming in, and you know, at that point, I'm not sure what year it was. Gosh, I think it was in high school, so maybe even middle school. I'm not sure. But at that point in time, they were releasing so many new versions of that particular program so rapidly that it was strange, and it was not a part of the Microsoft family of software and whatnot. And I remember that Microsoft even wasn't even offering any support or anything. Like if the Real software crashed, you know, whatever version of Windows you were on, if you called tech support, they wouldn't even help you. So that's what I find interesting about that time.
There's a little bit more history there with Real Player and Glacier. And the history is that Bill Gates, when he saw the video that was going to be transmitted over the internet, this small postage stamp, grainy, gobbledygook thing, he said to Glacier, who worked for him inside Microsoft Media, here, take the whole media, the package, the technologies, don't put it on my software, you go start your own company with it, and disassociate it from my Windows platform because it sucks. And nobody's going to use it except a handful of geeks and, you know, maybe an ad or two. And so Glacier then took that technology and formed Real Media, which then put out the Real Player. And, you know, their first videos were, you know, they did a Victoria's Secret supermodel launch, and when you tuned into it, you know, jokingly we referred to it as super goats, because you couldn't tell that they were models. It was all fragmented. You know, they removed so many screens compressing them. So what I came up with, completely out of the box, and it said, you know, if I don't know if you're familiar with the television and how it was resolved to deal with bandwidth limitations early on.
I heard your interview about that, and you were talking about how they actually brought in a psychologist or something to help figure out the interlacing, and that's how.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and so we're interlacing. We're getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah. Hold on. Okay.
Where interlacing was, you know, separating the frame and then rebuilding it on the user end. My concept was a little bit different in that it said, let's build the video quarter screen. Let's transmit a quarter screen, and then let's scale it to full screen. Now, if we could trick the human mind into thinking that it's watching full screen, when in fact it's only watching quarter screen data blown up or scaled up, then we win, because, you know, you have full screen, full frame rate video, even though what's behind it really is quarter screen. And it worked. And it was, you know, that literally simple to change the recipe from taking the full screen and trying to encode it to starting with small 320 by 240 screens and then scaling. And that's how we achieve full screen, full frame rate video, which we then took.
Now, Eliot, who was integral in the software development process when you were assembling IviewIt together? Who was on your team with you?
Well, I had a very small team of guys that had been working with me in multimedia design projects for other businesses I was working in. And that was mainly Jude Rosario and Zacharul Shirazi. And they worked at a club that my father belonged to. And we started working together trying to get this imaging and video stuff to work. And we spent a lot of sleepless nights and ripping out hardware, inserting new software, trying to get anything to work. And we were failing pretty much like every other group in the world that was trying to get full screen, full frame video. And so we started working with some other people, my brother-in-law, Guy Iantoni, my other brother-in-law, Rick Goldman, Jeff Friedstein, and one of my best friends, Jim Armstrong. And together we all started working on the web trying to, try different 1,000 combinations of things. And until I had these dreams that guided us, so to speak, we were all as lost as everybody else in the world. Once I had those dreams that led to the recipes of the inventions being given to me divinely, it's the only way I can explain it, we were no better than every other engineer in the world. So once the epiphany happened, we started taking the software necessary to create the invention to scale, because none of that existed at the time. And so Jude and Zach did a lot of the coding, and we, formulated the idea into basic software, and that's how it was put together early on. Then there were some other inventors along the way who started working with the company who also had key contributions to the invention.
Now, who initially approached you once you finally had IviewIt packaged, working, fully functional, once you had it together? Who were the first people who approached you in regards to your technology?
Well, we approached, well, what happened was, for example, Hassan Mia, and we had talked about Real Player earlier. Hassan had a company called Xing Technology. I don't know if you recall that company, Xing. Hassan had worked in the Intel CAA Multimedia Lab, which is accredited with spawning the internet from the government system it was prior into the internet for public consumption. So Hassan was one of the leading people in the development of the internet for the public. And when he came to see my inventions, and he was sent here by Kevin O'Donnell and Sky Dillon Dayton of Earthlink, the founders of Earthlink, to check out the technology. You know, he looked at the technologies and called them the Holy Grail, and he said, "I view it on fire right there." And then from there, with his blessing, Wayne Huizenga was the first investor in the company. You might know him from Blockbuster Video, Waste Management, the Miami Dolphins, AutoNation, and a few others, a billionaire investor. And upon his really first meeting and viewing of the technology, they wrote me a $500,000 check and really set the company up, you know, for next round investments. And then, you know, the next investors were Crossbow Ventures. So there was Steve Warner from Merrill Lynch, who came in and did several rounds of funding. And then we had already started doing accounts at that point with quite a few large players, such as Sony, Warner Brothers, AOL, Playboy, a whole host of companies that started to sign non-disclosure agreements, licensing arrangements, etc. with us.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned Playboy, because as many of my fan base and viewers are aware of, I come from the adult entertainment arena, and in my opinion, a big part of what's really driven the internet has been adult entertainment, because you know, all of, you know, the content, it's video. So in my view, IviewIt has played a phenomenal, I think if it weren't for IviewIt, the adult entertainment world would not be as lucrative of an online arena as it is. As of current, Playboy was just recently, all their online assets were acquired by adult industry super megacorp Manwin, a guy who runs that. His name was Fabian Thielman. The way I see it, that guy, he owes you quite a bit of money, considering.
They all do.
Uh-huh.
And you're right. Video is the primary driver of the internet. It's sucking up the most bandwidth. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, way back early 2000 or so, possibly even the late 90s, I met with a gentleman, Brad Weber, from, I can't remember the name of the company, who was in the adult entertainment industry.
That's
Mr.
interesting
Weber,
how the adult entertainment industry, they were aware of you though. Somebody was very aware of you and your technology.
Well, Brad was running big sites at the time, Cafe Flesh, etc., using the old video technique, and it was really bad video, so people weren't really willing to pay for it. Mm-hmm. So he was, you know, more kind of just putting it out there and trying to hope to sign people up to view this bad video in subscription. And so when Brad saw the product, they immediately offered me several $1 million to use my technology and brand it into pornography. Mm-hmm. But the technology truly was in its infancy, and when you understand my technologies, there's so many markets and uses for it that
Yeah.
Truly, I didn't want to brand my technology with pornography coming out of the gate.
Right.
I'm not sure I ever really want to brand with it.
Right.
Collect royalties possibly from it and shut down some of the sites that are doing things that, child pornography or anybody I could shut down, by not giving them a license.
Right.
I would, if I were controlling that and people were paying me my royalties, would have that ability to do those kind of things. But at that time, 5 minutes after I walked out of Brad Weber's office giving them, the secret sauce to how the inventions worked, they started putting up, video porn the next day, basically. And it now, I would say, if video is the primary driver of the internet, with 80+% of the bandwidth being used for it, that a good portion of that, over 50%, would probably be driven by the porno industry.
Now, when would you say things really went completely wrong in regards to the distribution of your software that you developed, Eliot?
Well, I was in a meeting with Warner Brothers, and I was trying to secure a $25 million investment, and we were about to go public. We had a Wachovia private placement out for 12. Warner Brothers was already utilizing my technologies. In fact, I had incorporated my California office inside of their advanced technology group in their building, and had taken over all the encoding for Warner Brothers. And we were working with Sony and some other studios on a project called Movie Link, where we were going to build a service to download all of the movie industry's movies to subscribers. Kind of what you're seeing happen 10 years later now through Hulu's and stuff. And so I was riding the roller coaster, and I was at peak when the Warner Brothers people said that something was afoul with the patents, that the president of our company, Brian Utley, who had been with IBM prior, running the Boca Raton T-Rex facility, had shown them, and that the patents that he had given them were not on file with the patent office, and the ones that were on file with the patent office had serious problems. And they advised me to get back to Boca and find out what was going on. They also notified us that we were in an involuntary bankruptcy and a loss of billing lawsuit with our attorneys, Proskauer, who were our patent counsel, and we had no idea of these two legal actions either. So I called a friend of mine who checked out if we were in these lawsuits, and lo and behold, we were. And when I got back to Boca, I confronted this guy, Brian Utley, the president of the company, and I grabbed the patent books on his desk at the time with a friend of mine, Jim Armstrong, who's the shareholder and inventor. And what we discovered was mind-blowing. We found there were patents in Brian Utley's name. And, like, for example, zoom-in pan on a digital camera, he had a patent in there in his own name using my lawyers, Foley, Lardner, and Proskauer, to achieve this patent that no investors had ever been told about, that we had never been told about. And then we also discovered that there were basically two sets of patent books. One with the wrong inventors, with Brian Utley and others that weren't inventors, and one with me, Zach, Juke, the group of inventors who were inventors. And they appeared to be for the same inventions, except in the ones that were for us, they were missing all kinds of key information, and in the other one, they were
complete,
much better. It could be amended and fixed. And so what we found was that the basics of the scheme, that they were trying to create carbon copy patents. They had created carbon copy companies they had started an involuntary bankrupt on the copy companies, and through this sophisticated legal scheme, my lawyers were stealing my patents.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the lawyers, Raymond Anthony Joe of Yonkers, real scumbag. I think he's a heroin user or something. He's really a trippy guy. Seemed like he was on a lot of drugs or something.
Probably was.
No, really.
Yeah.
And me and my wife even asked him about it because he was so strange when it came to taking invention disclosures. Well, what he might have been so nervous about was what he was doing. He actually took our inventions and put them in his own name, 90 plus patents. So upon discovering all this, you know, it went into a full-on war. Brian Utley, a little bit after we confronted him and found out that the patents were trying to be stolen and all this was going on.
Well, Eliot, it's pretty interesting how essentially these attorneys who are supposed to be on the up and up are nothing more than criminals using a legal mask. Is that how you would describe these attorneys? Because I personally have dealt with attorneys who have, in my view, been attached to organized crime. Do you think that organized crime even plays into everything that you've gone through in regards to IviewIt and just trying to get the information out there that you are the inventor? Because they are essentially trying to just not just cut you out of the equation, but erase you from history, just like they did with Nikola Tesla. This is amazing.
Well, hopefully, like Nikola Tesla, they haven't erased me. And that time will, you know, the truth will come out in time as to who the real inventor is. And so I understand them trying to minimize me, knock me out, and steal my patents. Listen, Monica, I'm a big boy, so when you invent a trillion-dollar invention, you better hold on for dear life. And that's my warning to all inventors. It isn't an easy road, invention. Nothing in life that has this kind of return is easy. So, like other inventors before me, you know, you might have a great invention and you got to go through a legal battle against industries that are huge, the auto industry, the oil industry, pharmaceutical industry, and they're going to try to rip you to shreds before they pay you any, you know, royalty. And that's without your lawyers trying to steal the patents. The only difference in my case appears to be this is a case where the patent attorneys have actually tried to steal it for themselves, not the corporations that are using it. So what happened here is what we discovered was kind of organized crime. In fact, after we fired this guy, Brian Utley, who we caught putting patents in his own name, who ran our company, a guy from IBM.
After we caught him stealing the patents, we did a background check on him because his resume was given to us by our lawyers.
Okay.
And at Proskauer Rose. And the guy, Chris Wheeler, who was the lawyer, brought in his friend from IBM saying he was the guy who invented the PC, basically. And what it really turned out was that he was a plant manager at IBM Boca. But what was more disturbing was we called his last reference, a gentleman, Monty Friedkin, a billionaire philanthropist here in Florida. And when we called Monty, we were blown away by what he said. Brian's resume had said that due to Brian's inventions for Mr. Friedkin, the company Mr. Friedkin had hired him for had gone on to be a leader in the industry they were in.
Mm-hmm.
When we called Mr. Friedkin, he told us a whole different story. He told us that Mr. Utley, along with Chris Wheeler from Proskauer Rose, and another gentleman that they had brought into my company, William Dick of Foley and Lardner, who's also found stealing the patents. They were the ones doing the second set of patents. We're all involved in trying to rip him off of intellectual property. who have priors in this scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they do, it appears, is they get people in close to the inventors. They start lifting your patents, and then they either gear you up for a bankruptcy and then hope to rub you out. In my case,
it's all about infiltration. Infiltration. They infiltrated you to figure out what they could do, and it's with the invention that they do this. It's the Matrix, actually.
It's a pattern and practice of criminal activity, which is important in showing a RICO that you have a criminal enterprise. That this group, they didn't just come to my company and decide to rip it off when they saw they were big patents. These guys had been ripping off other people's patents, possibly even some from IBM. I think Utley had to turn over back some patents to IBM regarding the touchpad that I think he tried to lift from IBM. And so what you see there is the answer to your question. Is this organized crime? Well, that's about as organized as it gets. They went from one guy, in fact, the attorney handing you a falsified resume when he knows what happened in the company, because he was the guy running these companies for Utley. Now, what happened in Friedkin's is interesting. It's almost identical pattern as in my company. Utley saw that Friedkin had technology and no less lawnmower equipment. It's a turf company, and here in Florida, golf courses are a big business. Okay. So it was for golf turf equipment. And Utley contracted Wheeler from Proskauer to open companies in his name at his home address outside of Friedkin's knowledge. And then he hired Bill Dick, who was IBM's former Far Eastern Patent Counsel. So Dick and Utley worked together at IBM. Wheeler had done a lot of real estate transactions here in Boca for the T-Rex Park. So the whole little group of them formed together. Dick wrote the patents into Utley's name, filed them into Utley's company that Wheeler had done, all without the knowledge of Friedkin. In fact, Friedkin tells the story that he was out of town when he got a call from a manufacturing plant overseas that wanted to retool their shop to accommodate his new patent, which they didn't think was going to work. And he said, "What patents? What intellectual property?" And all of a sudden he starts digging. Yeah. So Utley, Wheeler, and Friedkin all sat on the board of FAU together at the time they tried to rip Friedkin off. So he basically just, being a billionaire, instead of pursue this like I am, he just wrote it off as a bad investment, shut down the company, fired Utley, and that was that. And I guess he was waiting for something like this to happen with me to get his revenge, his sweet revenge. And see them brought to justice. So it was exactly what you're saying, that this is organized crime. They are seeking inventors. MPEG, all these inventions that are submitted to MPEG, take a look. It's all being monetized by a small group of people, not a big group of inventors. So what they're doing is going and learning of inventors' technologies, basically stealing them through the patent pooling scheme, because Proskauer, after learning of my inventions, went and acquired Ken Rubenstein, who had started the MPEG patent pool. He was with another law firm at the time, so it would be Goldstein, Wolf, and Schlissel. But nonetheless, what they do is they steal inventors' inventions, put them in the pool, and then block the inventor from gaining any market capability because they tied and bundled through the patent pools your invention to other inventions that they market through their license at MPEG. And, the poor inventors got a legal battle ahead of them. That is why the Justice Department in the past with like Seeger and RCA blew these patent pooling schemes apart, because they were in
fact schemes, and in some of them there were alleged murders of inventors to knock them out of competition.
You know what? Let's talk about that element now. I've become aware through investigative blogger Crystal Cox that your family, you've had not just threats, you had your car blown up. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because that's insane, but it happened.
It did, and it is insane. And what happened is, after we caught them stealing the patents, we first flew out to California, where I was, and came to the office and told me if I told anybody what I had discovered about his patents and these other lawyer schemes to try to steal the patents, that the lawyers and him would murder me and my family. The problem was I had already started to notify people like hearing notes at the Patent Office and other federal and state agencies that there was a threat of this theft, and start investigating.
Right.
And so what happened was the next week I had a call with several of the board members. Don came from Goldman Sachs, my father, people from Crossbow Ventures and others, some of the select group, to tell them what all we had done in the threats, and they decided I should stay in California and my wife should immediately pack up our children, leave my mother and my father here in Boca Raton, Florida, and move to California to stay away from them being able to kill me. So my wife packed overnight, took the kids from my mother, which I don't think she ever forgave us for, but we couldn't tell her the truth of the matter because she was suffering heart problems, and my dad felt if we told her that people were trying to kill us and the kids, she'd have a heart attack again and be dead.
Yeah.
So we prepared an elaborate lie that I was moving to California to work in that office and had to suddenly go overnight. We, basically hid out in hotels for several months until we could formulate complaints to the Patent Office, the FBI, and others more formally before they killed me. Now, once I filed complaints again, well, actually what happened was I came back to Florida to fight this involuntary bankruptcy we hadn't known about, and this Proskauer instigated billing lawsuit against companies that sounded like the name of our company and were identically named, in fact, our companies, but were part of that scheme we talked about to steal the patents, kind of like a corporate and patent shell game was going on, where they created duplicate patents and duplicate corporations and were trying to walk them out the back door. So I came back to fight that in West Palm Beach. Judge Jorge Labarga completely denied me any due process. Even though the companies Proskauer was suing, they had no retainer, which was kind of strange. Why were they suing companies they didn't have a retainer with? And in the involuntary bankruptcy, it was Utley, who was referred by Proskauer, and Real 3D, which was a consortium of Intel, Silicon Graphics, and Lockheed, who had signed a licensing agreement with me. And they were part of this involuntary bankruptcy, except none of them had contracts with the companies they were suing. And so it's really strange. Why would everybody be suing the wrong companies? Well, until we learned about these 15 plus companies they had set up, half without our knowing it, and found out that, oh my God, they were suing companies, like operating companies, because there were patents hidden in them. Even though in the Wachovia private placement, they had assured the bank that all of the intellectual properties were owned and assigned to IviewIt Holdings, which was one of our companies where all the patents were supposed to be. But now when the Patent Office started investigating who the owners and assignees were, they found out that was nothing like what was in the Wachovia private placement.
that led to hearing modes of the Patent Office directing me to write a letter to the Commissioner of Patents stating that fraud on the United States Patent Office had occurred and leading to the suspensions of my intellectual properties.
Who would you say has the power ultimately to bring closure and justice to this entire situation? Who do you think is going to be able to resolve this, if anybody? How do you think this is going to tie up and wind up?
Well, Monica, that's a complicated answer, and the reason is because when we busted them stealing the technology and they found out that there were federal complaints against them, etc., obviously they didn't just throw up their hands and surrender like most criminals. They're lawyers, so they tried every dirty trick to weasel their way out. They're cowards. This new generation of lawyers that's raised without ethics.
Oh, they're bad. They're real bad.
They're actually like criminals instead of lawyers. They're getting a license to break the law, not to uphold the law.
Exactly.
And, we're churning them out of schools at unbelievable rates where the only thing they care about is making, millions of dollars in any means, take pieces of clients, companies, technologies, violate conflict laws, etc. Well, when I busted them, for example, one of the law firms, Foley and Lardner, was being run at the time by Michael Grevy, who was the former RNC chief counsel at the time. So we allege that Grevy and Proskauer being a very large Democratic influence in New York, for many years dating back to Joseph Proskauer, when he was part of a coup to assassinate FDR. Joseph Proskauer acted as the stooge for J.P. Morgan.
Okay, so Eliot, being that there is all this corruption that's involved in our political system, within the realm of attorneys, what do you see as needing to manifest to implement change in order to correct all of this corruption?
Well, looking at Anderson's claims that people inside government that are trying to do their job and help people or do the right things and prosecute people that go against these corrupt attorneys and others, like the banks, for example, are being thrown out of their jobs. So if you've got a good regulator who's trying to do his job and regulate Bank of America, well, they get in there and they throw them out. If it goes to whistleblow, they do what they did during Anderson, fire them, harass them. Anderson was even physically assaulted by her superior. I mean, Anderson's a 60-plus-year-old woman who was just trying to do her job, and when she saw what was going on and exposed it, boom, she's knocked out, replaced with somebody else who will march to the order. And so we've got a real systemic problem that now, if you understand that Mike Grevy threw an election, the Bush v. Gore election, to block due process, and then since that point they've been funneling into the government lawyers to deregulate, to block prosecution, throw court cases while they commit their crimes, which is why nobody on Wall Street's gone to jail yet. What you see is that really the only way this is going to change is by justice prevailing, meaning we, the people, have to demand that our prosecutors prosecute, that our judges judge according to law. And for example, Eric Holder hasn't filed any criminal complaints when he has, beyond a reasonable doubt evidence of criminal acts by the bankers to rig world markets and cause economic calamity on billions of people. So the only way you're going to do that is arrest Eric Holder for failing to prosecute felonious activity and be part of a criminal RICO organization designed to subvert prosecution. And so since the elections are being rigged in every instance. And now basically you get, in the last election, there were basically only 2 candidates. All the other candidates got the media exposure, and a lot of them were calling for systemic changes that would change the guard in a lot of instances, put people into prosecute. Those people weren't given 1 minute of time. Nobody even knows who the other candidates were. The debates were 2 guys, period. So we've come down to a country with no choices. And, these people are being picked by the criminal RICO organization that's now called our government. And so you can pick A or B from party A or B, and either way you got the same thing, crime. So it doesn't matter who's in the White House if you're, controlling who gets put in there.
Well, today we've covered quite a bit of material, and I will be doing follow-up interviews with Eliot Bernstein in regards to his IviewIt technology and all of the issues involved. Now, for those of you who would like to find more information in regards to what I presented to you today, please visit investigative blogger Crystal Cox's website on www.crystalcox.com, and I will go ahead and put some links after this video closes in regards to where you can find more information in regards to Eliot Bernstein. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching.